Hi, everyone. Good morning, good day, or good afternoon to everyone who's joining us live today. Thank you. Today, we will discuss using geolocation data for sanctions compliance. This topic we thought is important to everyone working in sanctions because of a couple of recent developments that we have observed. We will go through two enforcement cases by OFAC, which highlighted the importance of geographical data when you do your sanction screening and when you allow transactions. So we will go through a couple of cases, but before we do that, I would like to first introduce geolocation data to those of you who have not been familiar with that topic yet. First of all, since this broadcast is for free to anybody on LinkedIn, I just wanted to briefly introduce the Association of Certified Sanctions Specialists, or ACSS, to you. I'm a sanctions and export controls consultant for ACSS. And for those of you who are new to the field of sanctions, you might have not heard of ACSS yet. We are the only association dedicated exclusively to the worldwide sanctions professional. If you become an ACSS member, there are a lot of benefits to a membership, including our webinars that we organize. We have a couple of webinars coming up still in July and then in September after a short summer break. So you can expect at least 2 webinars per month as a member for free, always around the topic of sanctions and export controls. We have ACSS local chapters, which allows you to meet fellow sanctions professionals and network depending on where your location is. We have multiple local chapters in the US, in the EU, and in Asia. Sanctions Connect calls, one is coming up actually on Friday. Sanctions Connect calls are membership-only events online where we can discuss sanctions topics. An interactive sanctions map where we provide information on all sanctioned countries, sanctions by the US, the EU, the UK, and Canada, to give you an overview of the current restrictions against those countries. Our LinkedIn group, which you can join after this call if you haven't done so, and membership discounts on all our courses that we provide, including the certificate course. So CSS is our Certified Sanctions Specialist certification program. I have done this program last year when I joined ACSS, and you go through a lot of studying, self-materials, reading assignments, but also virtual classes to prepare yourself for an exam on sanctions. And if you pass the exam, you become a Certified Sanctions Specialist, or CSS. So please check out our website for the upcoming dates for the CSS classes. And last but not least, we created the Anti-Circumvention Resources Hub for all of you. It's for free. You can access it through our website, and it provides you with information on sanctioned circumvention from the EU, the UK, the US, and other countries, including red flags. Last week, we actually did a broadcast on LinkedIn on top red flags, or 10 red flags on exporting to certain countries that are close to Russia. So please rewatch that video on LinkedIn if you have missed it last week. Before I start with the presentation, I just wanted to share with you that we have a global sanctions and export controls conference coming up in October in New York on the 12th and 13th of October. So if you are in New York, or if you are in the United States, or you would like to visit us and meet a lot of other sanctions professionals and other ACSS members, including myself, please join us in New York for our conference on global sanctions and export controls. Okay, so today's topic, geolocation data for sanctions compliance. First, I will go through the concepts that we will discuss today, just to give you an idea about what we are talking about. Then we will look at why geolocation data is important, including 2 recent OFAC enforcement cases. Then I will list a couple of things that you can do to mitigate your sanctions risks related to geolocation data. And we will look at how you can improve using geolocation data when you are screening existing customers, but also when you are onboarding new customers. So let's begin. Geolocation data is information used to identify the geographic location of a device or data file. And in this context, it's also important to mention IP address and VPN, because we will discuss these a lot today. An IP address is a string of numbers separated by periods and is a publicly available unique identifier for a device on the internet or a local network that contains location information. Although IP addresses in normal circumstances can indicate where online traffic derives from, they are also susceptible to manipulation because virtual private networks, or VPNs, can conceal the actual location of the user. That's why I included VPN in this overview as well. Now that you're familiar with the terms that we are discussing today, or we're using today, let's begin with the presentation. So what is geolocation data? I was trying to find actual geolocation data, or how to visualize for you, because we work in different organizations and we have different types of data. Some of you might work for a bank, some of you might work for a digital assets organization, some of you might just work for a company exporting certain products that has customers and vendors. So I just found this really easy information showing you how data of a person in your system just might look like if you search for a person. Obviously, the country code, where the person is from, the region where that person is from, the city, the postal code. And then if you are also collecting geographical data, the latitude and the longitude, which will be more important to us later in this discussion. So geolocation data is information about the physical location of an object or person collected through various means, such as GPS tracking, Wi-Fi triangulation, and cell tower signal analysis. The information gathered includes latitude and longitude coordinates, altitude, speed, and direction of movement sometimes, especially for map providers, such as Google Maps. So why is geolocation data important, and why are we actually picking up this topic today? I just wanted to show you a quote from Andrea Gacki. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her last name incorrectly. She is the former OFAC director and has recently been announced as the new director of FinCEN. And Andrea said that OFAC has been highlighting the importance of using geolocation tools as an effective internal control, both in your sanctions compliance guidance, or in OFAC sanctions compliance guidance for the virtual security industry, but also through the recent enforcement actions that we have seen from OFAC. So let's have a look at two recent OFAC enforcement actions. In May 2023, OFAC announced that Poloniex, a Delaware virtual currency exchange company, agreed to pay approximately $7.6 million to settle potential civil liability for almost 66 alleged violations of multiple US sanctions programs. OFAC alleged that violations occurred with trades, deposits, and withdrawals conducted by sanctioned persons in Crimea, Cuba, Iran, Sudan, and Syria. Poloniex failed to retroactively screen its existing customers. As a result, existing customers located in a sanctioned jurisdiction at the time they opened their account with Poloniex generally were allowed to continue using the company's services. And then only a month later, in June 2023, Swedbank Latvia, which is headquartered in Riga, Latvia, and is a subsidiary of Swedbank AB, has agreed to pay $3,430,000 to settle its potential civil liability for 386 apparent violations of OFAC sanctions on Crimea. Throughout 2015 and 2016, a customer of Swedbank Latvia used Swedbank Latvia's e-banking platform from an internet protocol address, IP address, in Crimea to send payments to persons in Crimea using a US correspondent bank. So not only the two enforcement cases, but also previous guidance documents provided by the Treasury Department and OFAC are just highlighting the importance to screen your customers or your transactions and also use geolocation data. I found this really interesting map which shows you how easy it is to manipulate IP addresses. To effectively block sanctioned individuals and transactions, a business needs to know their customers' true location. So where are your customers really? In order to do this, your organization is probably relying on IP addresses to verify your customers' locations. But OFAC highlighted that IP addresses are one of the easiest location data points to manipulate. And this data, shown here by GeoComply, shows that in only 3 months, a GeoComply detected 1,760 attempted transactions from Russia with IP addresses manipulated to appear as though they are users located in the United States. The demand for virtual network providers, which are concealing your true IP address, has shot up, especially in Russia, since late February, when the sanctions started to increase against Russia, where the demand for VPNs rose 2,692% between February 24th and March 24th, according to research from top10vpn.com. The fact that international distribution authorities, such as VPN service providers, can reassign IP addresses makes the geographic location of an IP potentially dynamic. So it's not easy to know the true location of your customers or where your transactions are being initiated from. That's why we need to look at certain things that you can do to mitigate those risks. Using the available guidance documents provided by OFAC and FinCEN, we compiled a list of things that you can do, practical things. Some of them you might already do, which are part of your sanctions compliance program, which means that you are already aware of geolocation data for sanctions compliance. But here are a couple of things that you can do to mitigate your risks relating to IP addresses. So you can adopt IP address geo-blocking tools to flag jurisdictions and regions subject to sanctions and to block access by persons in these jurisdictions. For example, you have to use a geolocation tool, blocking tool, and tell this tool to block transactions or persons from jurisdictions or sanctioned countries or regions. For example, as we know, in OFAC's Russia sanctions program, OFAC prohibits certain transactions with persons and entities in regions within Ukraine, such as Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, or Kharkov. So you need to screen your system, your transactions, and your customers and vendors for these regions. You need to find out if somebody in these regions is trying to initiate any dealings with your organization. Secondly, you can conduct training for the team in your organization that handles bulk spreadsheet orders for manually screening email addresses for jurisdictions and regions subject to sanctions. For example, you can find out how do email addresses of our customers end if they are located in certain sanctioned jurisdictions. Email addresses in Russia probably end with RU, so you can already increase your sanctions screening appetite by searching for email addresses with certain endings. Then, of course, it's important to review those flagged transactions or persons and not immediately block them, because it doesn't always mean that something is prohibited. You can add towns and cities, including their postal codes and the different spellings and translations of localities in the region, which are connected to sanctioned jurisdictions, and add them to your screening software. As I mentioned, Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk, Kharkov, they can all be inserted as keywords into your screening software solution to make sure that those transactions or customers are flagged when those words are being used, and make sure you use different translations and spellings of those keywords. What you can also do is run 2 monthly reports. One report identifying any customer over the prior month from jurisdictions and regions subject to sanctions, and the other report identifying any IP addresses over the prior month associated with such jurisdictions. And when you have a look at these reports, you can decide if there's anything that you need to dive deeper into and analyze it. You can detect location spoofing, and location spoofing is basically disguising a user's true IP address via VPNs, proxies, fake GPS apps, and other anonymizers by screening IP addresses against known VPN IP addresses and identifying improbable logins. So, known VPN IP addresses. You can find known VPN IP addresses which are used to hide a real IP address, and you can search in your screening system for these VPN addresses. And that will tell you that somebody who might be in a sanctioned jurisdiction is using another VPN to disguise their true location. You can also identify improbable logins. For example, if somebody usually logins from a country that has not been sanctioned and is suddenly logging in from the United States, it might be a red flag and indicate that someone is using a VPN. So you can check existing customers and check if they have suddenly changed their login location from a sanctioned jurisdiction to a non-sanctioned jurisdiction. Now let's look at what you can do to include geolocation data screening or tools for your existing customers and also for new customers which you are onboarding. I know this slide is very full with text. I usually don't like using so much text on the screen, but in this case, I just wanted to provide you with this information. So please let me know if you need the presentation and I can share it with you so you can read through these tips that I listed here again. So you can, for existing customers, retroactively screen your existing customers for IP addresses and geographical location and review those customers located in sanctioned jurisdictions. So information that you already have, use that data and screen it against sanctioned jurisdictions' geographical data. Stop in-process transactions with information on sanctioned persons or jurisdictions and review them. That's a clear red flag if you have a sanctioned person in a transaction. Create an IP blacklist for accounts with connections to sanctioned jurisdictions. This is something that you can do. Maybe some software providers provide IP blacklists of entities that have been designated by the United States, the EU, or the UK. You can find out the IP addresses or the websites of certain entities and block them in your system. You can add more keywords to be flagged in your screening process, such as sanctioned jurisdictions, including keywords like North Korea, Syria, Crimea, Russia, and Belarus, if you haven't done so yet. You can identify the use of high-risk VPNs, fraudulent IP addresses, and other location spooking methods of your existing customers. And this is something that you need to find out how to do it with a IP address spoofing tool, which will help you identify those transactions. You can implement an automated control to block accounts using cities and postal codes associated with sanctioned jurisdictions. You can create an inventory of all access points where users can log in. For example, if you have a certain cloud service that you provide, you should create an inventory of all your customers using your cloud service and from which location they are using your cloud services. Include sanctions penetration testing in your annual audit to verify if it's possible to log on to any of your organization's sites with an IP address from a sanctioned country or jurisdiction. So task somebody that is part of your audit team to try to log in or try to access your platform using a VPN, basically disguising their true location, and see if anybody in your company, in the compliance department, or in your KYC due diligence process identifies this access to your platform as a red flag and escalates it. And of course, you can check geographical data from other sources which might be available to you, such as invoices that you might receive, which include a lot of geographical information, and of course, email addresses. Now, let's have a look at what you can do before you actually, or when a new customer is being introduced during the onboarding process. You can gather authentic identification information on your customer before a new account is opened or initiated. You have to ask for more detailed identification information for these new customers, including certain geographical data that you might not have asked for previously, such as the postal code, the city, and the country. You can block new customers with IP addresses or locations in sanctioned jurisdictions. And you can use geofencing, which means you can create a virtual perimeter around sanctioned or high-risk jurisdictions using verified location data. Geofencing basically allows you to put a fence around certain countries that you say, I don't want anyone from that country accessing my website, trying to buy my services or my products or creating any profiles and become a user if that person is located in this fenced geographical area. And you can identify the use of high-risk VPNs, fraudulent IP addresses, and other location spoofing methods used during the onboarding process to make sure that nobody uses a hidden IP address to become a user or have a transaction with your organization. All right, sorry for so much information on the last 3 slides, but I will gladly share this presentation with you so you can revisit those tips and tricks. So in conclusion, you have to incorporate geolocation tools and IP address blocking controls as part of your sanctions compliance program, if you haven't done so yet. Your organization should be able to use geolocation tools to identify and prevent IP addresses that originate in sanctioned jurisdictions from accessing your organization's website and services for activity that is prohibited by sanctions regulations. Without these internal controls, your organization may fail to prevent persons who are located in a sanctioned jurisdiction from accessing your platforms or services and engage in a prohibited activity. Thank you so much for your comments. I receive your comments and I will go through them in a minute and see if you had any burning questions. I tried to answer your questions as well. Before I finish this presentation, I just wanted to share this information with you. I used these guidance documents which mention geolocation data. Most of them are published by the US Treasury Department, by OFAC and FinCEN, and I will share these links with you as well. I highlighted the 2021 Treasury OFAC guidance named Sanctions Compliance Guidance for the Virtual Security and Currency Industry because it included a lot of good tips on how to use geolocation data as part of your sanctions compliance program. So please download these guidance documents and read them carefully and pick out the things that you haven't done yet and make sure you include them in your sanctions compliance program. So you avoid penalties and fines and you just look prepared if something ever happens. And you can show that you are actually using geolocation data as part of your sanction screening process. Visit our Sanctions Circumvention Resources Hub for more information on sanctions circumvention, including IP address spoofing and also other resources. And visit our ACSS webinar archive, and that's for everyone who has already an ACSS membership. We have a lot of on-demand webinars that happened in the past, which you can rewatch because we recorded them, such as this one, which we did in April on preventing and detecting circumvention of EU trade restrictions via third countries. It also mentions red flags for sanctions evasion. And last but not least, a couple of events. All of those events are for ACSS members only. We will have some sponsored webinars soon, which will be free for all, but these ones are for ACSS members only. We have a UK Sanctions Outlook mid-year review this Thursday. So if you are interested in UK sanctions, please register through our website for this event. On Friday, we have a Sanctions Connect call where you can ask an expert on OFAC sanctions anything you want. And in September, after a short summer break, we will look at assessing ownership and control from an EU and UK perspective. Thank you very much for joining us today. I will now read through your comments in the comment section and see if I can pick out any questions that you had and if I can answer those questions. Thank you so much for your comments. Thanks, Shiomara, for your question. Shiomara asks, what are the privacy risks of geolocation since location data might be subject to greater protections measures? That's a really good question. Of course, for those of you who are in the European Union, you are also familiar with the GDPR privacy regulations. I'm not an expert on GDPR, but you have to find the right balance and make sure you respect all the laws and regulations, the privacy laws and regulations, when conducting your due diligence. I'm sure there's a good point of how much information you can collect, how long this information should be stored, and when you have to delete certain information. But it's also your responsibility to check the privacy laws and regulations to wherever you are located, because it can be different in the US and the EU and other jurisdictions. Okay, everyone is asking for the slides. Then I will make sure that I will share the presentation with you in the comment section of this LinkedIn event, if I can upload or attach a file. Otherwise, I'll send them to you privately to your mailbox. I don't see any more other questions here. So thank you very much for joining us again this week. We will find a new topic for upcoming LinkedIn broadcasts. Please let me know if there's any burning question that you have, and we will make sure that we will prepare a nice presentation for you on that topic for the upcoming weeks. If I don't see you in the next couple of weeks, I hope you all enjoy your summer holidays, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.